which is not to take away from the genius of your plan, Orson Fortune. That is a sexy name.
Hi there, welcome back to my YouTube channel, Watch by Ashley, where we take a look at some of the new releases on the big streaming platforms and video on demand and discuss whether or not they're worth the watch. Today we're going to be taking a look at Guy Ritchie's 13th feature film, and that is Operation Fortune, Ruse de Guerre. So this film had a very interesting release. It was originally filmed in 2021 and it was all set up for release in 2022, but because the spy film had the villains or the gangsters in this film with Ukrainian origin, they decided it wasn't appropriate to release because of the conflict between Ukraine and Russia. And for the studio, that was a huge financial hit. I mean, they invested $50 million in this film. They have a pretty good cast here, and they just kind of shot themselves in the foot in terms of not releasing it. And because they decided finally that, you know, like I said, they invested all this money, let's see what we can recoup. It's had a very limited theater release, so they've only been able to bring in about $30 million in the international box office, which is a real shame. It's going to be released on streaming in April, so you can most likely catch it on Amazon Prime. I don't really agree with the decision to completely halt it. I mean, I don't understand why they didn't just change the name or the origin of the gangsters in this film, but that's the decision they made. They kept them Ukrainian in this release, so very strange decision there. And a few more strange decisions kind of continue on with this film. So let's get into it. As I mentioned, this is Guy Ritchie's 13th film, and it's his 5th time working with Jason Statham. So previously they did Snatch, they did Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, Revolver, and Wrath of a Man, which is another film that I really enjoyed. So they're frequent collaborators, and typically they do a really good job together. To me, this film kind of lacks soul. Like, it doesn't have the wittiness of Snatched, and it doesn't really have necessarily the hardcore action of Wrath of a Man, in my opinion. But it is definitely entertaining, and there are other facets to the cast that add layers and depth to the film. So joining Jason Statham, we have Aubrey Plaza, so you might be familiar with her. Like, I've been a fan of hers ever since Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. She's known for having a very dry sense of humor, and so I was expecting her to be comedic relief in this film, and she kind of does do that here.
I can get inside the Ukrainians.
I hope you take them to dinner first, before you get inside of them.
Then we also have Josh Hartnett in the film, and I think Josh Hartnett is like a Hollywood darling. Like, everyone loves him. I think a lot of people want to see more of him, but he has been able to identify that fame isn't necessarily something that agrees with him, so he takes a step back every now and again. So it is nice to see him here. He's a nice touch to the cast here. He plays like a actor that our eccentric billionaire is fascinated with, and they need his help to kind of seduce the billionaire. And playing the eccentric billionaire, we have Hugh Grant.
You strike me as someone who doesn't take orders. No, shush, because I'm talking.
Hugh Grant has been like exported heartthrob from the UK for a very long time, and so it's very interesting to see him do like roles where he's not as well viewed. So here he's an eccentric billionaire kind of villain, and it's a very interesting portrayal. I think that he's more like Bricktop from Snatch, and I really enjoyed his performance. Actually, I'd say that Hugh Grant and Jason Statham are like the stand-up performances in this movie. Bugzy Malone is also in the film. I think he did a great job. I would consider him to be like a new actor because he's more so a rapper. $50 million, it definitely does feel high budget. He did a lot of the principal photography in Turkey and Qatar. And one thing Guy Ritchie does really well is really showing off his locations, bringing out the essence of them. Like, I was really impressed with a lot of the shots, but I mean, to an extent, it's Guy Ritchie, so that's what's to be expected. So that was a really good aspect of the film. It's definitely a strength. So the good parts are definitely Jason Statham, Hugh Grant, and majority of the photography here. It was really great in the direction. I really liked in some of the action scenes where they had the camera angle from the barrel of Jason Statham's gun. I thought that was pretty cool. Kind of makes you feel like you're in a video game. It adds to the layer of action, so that was pretty neat. The negatives kind of outweigh the positives in this film, unfortunately. So when I think of a spy movie, right, it's kind of like good guys versus bad guys. There's something that's stolen and we have to have like the British government get it back. And this seems right up Guy Ritchie's alley. Like, this should be a knockout of the park, easy for him to do. Like, A Man from U.N.C.L.E. was fantastic. But this movie, just like I said, it doesn't have soul. It doesn't have grit. The script was really lacking. I was really disappointed. It didn't have the wittiness or the charismatic aspects of Snatch or Man from U.N.C.L.E. It was just really like flat. He wasn't the only writer here. He had Ivan Atkinson and Martin Davies join him as writers. So I don't know if that was their influence, and it didn't feel like a Guy Ritchie film, which is a shame because to me, Bullet Train from last year felt more like a Guy Ritchie film than this movie, and it just makes you wonder if Guy Ritchie's out of his element now, or if he's lost the minerals, as they say in Snatch. So that was kind of disappointing. Like, and there was also just weird choices in direction. So as I said, Aubrey Plaza, like her being added to the cast, I expected her to be like a comedic relief for the film. And they do try to do that with her character, but for me the jokes kind of landed flat, and I think that's just in the way that Fortune, Jason Statham's character, kind of reads off of it. So for example, like she'd make these jokes kind of like hitting on him, and they're all sexual and inappropriate.
Apparently you're the new John.
Not meaning a toilet or a prostitute's client, I take it?
John didn't have a personality. I like John.
Like his character doesn't really go for it, and it was just a really strange choice, and they did it over and over again. Like I think maybe like once or twice it would have been enough. And also there's this scene where it's like ASMR. They did it twice here. ASMR with Aubrey Plaza's character, where she's kind of giving like a rundown of what they're doing. And it just felt really strange. Like it didn't really fit the film.
And they're all sleeping like babies now. They're not gonna wake up anytime soon.
Overall, the movie is a bit convoluted, so these things that they did I thought were unnecessary. Another thing I didn't really like about the film was the way they did their flashbacks. So before you actually get to see the full action, they stop it, and we end up in the present, and then we have to go back to that scene where they had just stopped the action, and it was very jarring and not cohesive, and I didn't really like that choice. So I don't know if that's nitpicking, but I do think it's aspects of the film where they kind of dropped the ball and they just made it a bit more confusing than it had to be. So spoiler warning going forward, because I'm going to do a high-level summary of the film in case you're curious but don't want to commit the time of watching it. So let's get into it. So when we start the film, there is a special device called the handle that gets stolen, and at the time it's within British territory, so the British government really wants to get it back, but no one really knows exactly what it does, so that's a level of mystery here. And one of the British intelligence agencies, they decide to hire a well-known spy within their ranks.
So, who will be heading up your team?
Oh, the usual chap. Austin Fortune.
And Fortune kind of has a reputation about him. Like, he's very good at his job, but he's very expensive because he likes to gripe and complain about his accommodations. So one of his things is medicine, which is very expensive wine, and that's a part of his retainer. So it's an ongoing joke throughout the film that he's just costing the government a lot of money with all of his extravagance. And Fortune is tasked with getting this handle back, and he is given a team to work with. And a part of his team is Sarah Fidel, played by Aubrey Plaza. And she's kind of like a tax expert, so she hacks everything, gets into security, and that's kind of her wheelhouse, but she does really want to get into the field. So we kind of delve into that a little bit in the film. Then we also have JJ, played by Bugzy Malone in the film. He's like a weapons expert, getaway driver. That's kind of his thing in terms of the team. And so these three are out in the field, and they also have a case handler, Nathan, who's kind of guiding them throughout their process and the liaison between them and the government. And so their whole thing is to kind of get a hold of the handle before the Ukrainians can sell the handle on the black market. And like I said, they don't know what it is, so they're trying really hard to just stop the threat before it gets out of control. There's another competing contractor who is also trying to get a hold of the handle, and they assume that it's a contract from the government as well, just to have more eyes on the prize. At first it starts off as a friendly competition. Like every time that there's a lead, they both end up at the scene together. And it gets very annoying for Fortune and his team, but they believe that they're the best, so they're persevering through. And throughout their research, they kind of figure out that the eccentric billionaire Greg Simmons, played by Hugh Grant, is actually going to be the one brokering the deal between the Ukrainians and whoever their mystery buyer is going to be for this handle. But the only way to get to Greg Simmons is through a celebrity. There's a well-known actor named Danny Francesco, played by Josh Hartnett, who Greg Simmons is obsessed with. So they decide, okay, we're gonna have you go to this charity event with Sarah Fidel, their tech agent, as his girlfriend, and you're gonna befriend the billionaire so that we can get close enough to him to clone his devices and kind of figure out who's gonna buy this handle. And it goes better than they expected, because the billionaire actually takes the bait and he actually invites Danny Francesco to his compound in Turkey so that he can kind of have a one-on-one with him. And this is the perfect opportunity for them to infiltrate the system and really find out what's going on with the deal. And while they're going through that on both ends, so you have Sarah and Danny Francesco, the actor, kind of infiltrating Greg Simmons' compound in Turkey, but then you have Fortune and JJ, they are on the boots on the ground, kind of running down leads literally. And while they're doing this, they end up actually at the drop-off site for the handle, and they end up discovering that Mike, his rival, the other spy team, they're actually not working for the government. They've actually gone rogue, and what they've done is they've stolen the handle from the Ukrainians, killed all the Ukrainians who were involved in the deal, and they were going directly to the buyer. And we find out that the buyer are just these like two tech bros, and what their intention is with the handle, it's a very powerful algorithm that can actually hack into any computer system. And if they do that to the banking system, they can basically dissolve the confidence in the banking system and cause like the dollars of any currency to drop to zero. And they were going to buy up all the gold and cause financial panic. So this was a really serious situation, and of course the government did not want to have that happen. And so they end up going back to Greg Simmons, who has now discovered that everyone basically lied to him, that they're spies, and he's kind of annoyed by the situation, but he's even more pissed off that Mike and his team cut him out of the deal, so he didn't get his $1 billion commission for brokering this deal. And so he decides to work with Fortune and his team, and he ends up approaching the tech bros, and he's like, you know, you have to give me my payment, because if you don't, what I'm gonna do is kill all your families. And it's a very interesting scene here, because he comes off as this like really intimidating figure, which he wasn't previously for the majority of the film. So it's a really nice scene here, but he threatens them all, and essentially they're able to prevent the handle from going into the wrong hands, and Fortune and his team save the day. So that's essentially the plot in a nutshell. It is a pretty convoluted story, to be honest with you. It's kind of all over the place, and the flashbacks here and there really don't help in terms of making it a coherent film. The other thing that I found with the film, in terms of like a technique standpoint, like there were some things that I found to be very strange. So the editing was a little bit off, like I said, in terms of like the way they position the flashbacks, and like they cut certain things like mid-sentence or just very abruptly, and it just felt a little unpolished. Another thing was like there's a scene where they're on the tarmac and they're getting off of like a jet. And I don't know if the jet was actually just live and there was like a lot of heat coming off of the jet, but like the shot is very blurry, and I just thought it was very strange that that's the way they chose to have that shot. Just questionable, and that might be a little nitpicky, but I just noticed that, and I didn't think that for Guy Ritchie that would be something he would do. And ultimately, like I said before, like I don't really agree with the studio's decision to pause the movie for the year because they used Ukrainian gangsters in the film. Like I said, easily they could have changed the name of the country that they're from or made it ambiguous. Like in Top Gun Maverick, they didn't even mention who that enemy was for their film. So like things like that could have been done to kind of save the movie. I think it's just a shame that it's not going to do well in the box office, and it does feel like a half-baked film. If I was to rate the film, I think it is a solid 6 out of 10. And I don't know, 6 feels low for a Guy Ritchie film in my opinion, because I really do love a lot of his films. Like Snatch I watch like more than once a year because it's just so funny and it's so fun. I really enjoyed Wrath of a Man. I love Man from U.N.C.L.E. So like I know Guy Ritchie is really capable of these fast-paced action movies. It's just a shame that this movie really misses the mark and fell very flat. Some of the decisions that they made here were very questionable, so I don't know. I wasn't a big fan of the movie. But those are my thoughts in regards to Operation Fortune, Ruse de Guerre.
Ruse de Guerre. Very good. Carry on.
Please let me know in the comments below, what's your favorite Guy Ritchie film? Have you seen this movie? Did you enjoy it? Did it miss the mark, or is it just me? But that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the content here but you haven't subscribed yet, please consider doing so, as it will really help me growing the channel, and I really appreciate that. But thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take care. Bye.